Yep. Good evening, everyone. So, last session we learned about working with URL. So, we discussed about one important concept about virtual path and physical path. We learned about how to use virtual and physical path. So, means we discussed about what is URL and what is URI, what are protocols. We discussed about domain. We discussed about domain types, .in, .com, what will happen. We saw one example of a web server. Which web server I showed you? IIS. IIS is web server. Web server is IIS web server. It is for hosting websites and managing websites on our computer. So alternatively, if you have Windows, you can have this IIS. Alternatively, if you don't have Windows, then you can use WAMP, XAMPP, and other servers. What are the other servers? XAMPP is another server. WAMP also another server. So you can download and use these servers. Generally, people belong to Java, PHP, and other technologies. They need those servers. People who belong to Microsoft and General Web who are using Windows, they can use this server. What is it? IIS. Already I showed you the process. Creating website, uh, storing the resources, accessing them and all. Have you tried that IIS? IIS, have you tried? Anyone? I showed you the process of hosting a website and all, right? No? You haven't tried? I asked you to try this one, IIS. I told you that you don't need to practice, but you can just take a look on IIS how it works, because I given the process also how to create, right? So now after understanding this, why we discussed all that? Because we need to know about what is URL, what is URI, like concepts. So after understanding that, now we need to learn about the node URL module. We need to know about the URL module of Node.js, how to handle that. So what is the purpose of this URL module is? Actually, it provides set of classes with the properties and methods used to handle server URL, used to handle the server URL. So you can handle the server URL. So what properties? So that means you can access the virtual path and know the resource location. You can access the virtual path and know the resource location. Accessing virtual path and know the resource location. So how do we do this? How this URL module works? Let's see. Actually, in our server app, So in this server app, we are configuring the URL module. So we have to import constant URL is equal to require. Node.js provides a URL module. You need to import that URL module. URL module provides so many, you can say it is going to provide so many properties and methods. For that, first we need to access the URL, client URL, or any URL is there, you can access it and you can use it. For example, suppose you see console.log. First, we will try to know the properties. First, how do you know what is the type? How do you know the type of this URL? Is it an object or is it a function? Is it a property? How do we know the detail? You simply have an option. So you can see it is a module. Already it is there. You can simply use type of. By using type of, we can access. We already know that I'm just using a for where property in URL. We are reading all the properties and we will print the properties. Now let's see here what are the properties and how to handle them. This is test.js, node test.js. These are all the properties. URL have some important properties like URL, parse, resolve object, format, URL search parameters. I hope you already learned this in your JavaScript. For which purpose we use? To access the query string. To access query string in JavaScript, we have URL search parameters. Already when you learned about query string, you know that, right? So there are so many properties and methods. In that, one important is parse. This is what important for us initially. Generally, parse is going to take an URL and read the URL, convert the URL into understandable format, and it will return so many details. That means what I will do, I will here create an object. So we will create var. Suppose I am giving virtual path is equal to URL dot, we have a method pass. And what is the virtual path? You need to define the virtual path. And you see virtual path, when you define the URL path, it is asking the path as string. It is expecting parse query string true. And that means allow the query string to convert into readable format. Parsing is nothing but allow to convert, because you know in the address bar, you already learned forms concept. When we submit some data, it will add some codes. Suppose you are submitting space, it will add a code plus. You are adding some other characters, then automatically it will add percentage, some symbols and some characters it will add. That means what generally URL does is, it will not submit your data as it is, it will actually convert it and display in a encoding form. To read that encoding form and convert into normal form, you need which method? Parse. For example, you already know this because you have learnt the form concept in HTML. Actually, in the form, So we have some text box. Name is str and we have a button. Usually what happens now in this, when I run, you entered something here. Suppose welcome to Node.js, and so here I am giving some sam@gmail.com like this. When you entered some characters, some special characters, and when you submit, it is going to submit with a lot of special symbols here. That means the plus mark indicates that you are using space. This %40 indicates that it is an @ This is encoded. Whenever you are reading, it should not read in the same format. It should read again into normal. Then we need a method. What is that method? We have to use the parse method. That means parse method is asking the URL first. What is your URL? http://. So here we are defining what is it? Localhost : some 3000, some roughly. Later we can access from the client path and use it. Then slash, what is the name? So that means page name. Suppose this is the page name, or last session I showed you na slash. We have the site name. In that we have the page.html. It may have some query string. Query string is like, suppose ID is 1, ampersand, some name is equal to TV. Like this, you can have some virtual path. Now, another option is, after configuring the path, you need to define, allow the query string to convert or not, parse true or false. You have to always set it to what? Allow the conversion, it is always true. Otherwise, you can see the parse method. If I don't define this allow true or false, you see parse method shows a strikeout, where the strikeout is meaning, but that means the signature is wrong. You know, function have a signature now. Every function have a declaration and a signature. And what is the signature? Every signature, function signature, contains a boolean true. You have to define it to true. Now this virtual path can access the path that you have defined very clearly. Anything, spaces, everything it will ignore and it will show that. So now you log this console.log. Virtual path is an URL which contains lot of details. Like, from this URL, you can get which protocol it is using. You can get what is the domain name. You can get what is the query string. You have a lot of details here. You see, virtual path is having so many details. Host name is nothing but server name. Server name, IP address you can get by using host name. href means it will return the complete path. And path name means it will get the page name, in which folder the page is present. Protocol means it will get the protocol. Query means it will get the complete query string. You can have search also. Search will get the query string. So these are all important properties in methods. By using these properties, we can access the details from the virtual path. Actually, you learned another one, path module. That is good for path module, is not for virtual path. It is for physical path. To access anything from the physical path, that is the best. Virtual path you can access by using which one? URL. So many times you will find similar type of options in both places. You can use path module for a virtual also, but whenever you have to deal with virtual path, always recommended to use which one? Virtual path means URL. Physical path means path. You have to use that. So here virtual path have a lot of details. What are the details? For example, I am using here console.log. First, I want a protocol. Which protocol they are using? Virtual path.protocol. It will get the protocol name. /n in the next line. I want the domain name, means server name or IP address. So I will give server name. How to get the server name? We can get virtual path, not host name. Host name will get the server name. Actually, if it is server name, it will get the server name. If there is IP address, it will get the IP address. IP address is like 127.0.0.1, like this, it will get the IP address. Similarly, I want to get the search parameter. That means in the next line. So here we have a query string. Query string. How do we get the query string? Query string we can get by using virtual path dot what search, or actually we can also use dot what. So we have another one, query. It is going to get the query string. Now you run this and see, it is going to get all the details and display here. So what is the problem? Cannot convert object of a primitive value. So some object is there. What is it? This is a property. This is also property. Somewhere one property is not there. Actually, this is also property. Host name is also a property. Query is a property. Okay, query have a problem because actually query string requires /n. Query is equal to location dot what search, and it is going to get the query string actually. It is having a different path. This is an object. I think what it returns. It returns the query string, but it is unable to return the query string because I think we have some page related problems. Let's see. So path name. This is virtual path dot path name. Acha, so it is returning slash. Dot search. Fine. It will get the query string correctly. You can see the query string, it is getting question mark ID and the name is equal to TV. So we can access the query string by using virtual path search and virtual path. We have another option, that is query. Query is expecting as an object type again. That means what we have to do, convert it, that object into a normal, and we have to use it. That because query is expecting, it is a promise. Promise means it is expecting again a URL, and from that URL it will get the query string. That means what we have to do, what is the URL that is having query string? We can use the virtual path dot what search. Virtual path dot search will get the query. We need to use that. Means its syntax is that. Another option is there. Query is not a function type. It should be used with some. Let's put a search. Actually, search is returning the query string. This is returning the query string. And one more point is From this query string, we need to access these details. How do we access the details from the query string? Let's write this one. So I will just put console.log type of virtual path dot what query. It is an object. Object means, so we will create here for var property in virtual path dot query, means which object properties are there, we will see. Okay, it has query have ID and name. Two properties are present in that query. That means dot ID and name, property ID and name. That means I'm just looking at any changes are there or not in that. That is dot query ID and name. It is going to get the value. Okay, it is coming fine. Two properties it is having. Actually, what it is doing, it is returning this as a object. So what we have to do, var obj is equal to virtual path dot what query. It is returning an object. Object contains two details. What are those? One is product ID. Product ID, how we can access? We can access obj dot, we have a key called ID. In the next line, name, the product name. How to access the product name? Obj dot what name. It is nothing but we are accessing these two details. We are accessing those two details and displaying. Now let's see. So it is going to fetch that information and show product ID is 1 and the product name is T. So query string, you can access the query string by using query, or you can also access by using location. This one is search. What is difference is search will return the query string starting with question mark and key and value. What this query will return? It will return like an object, in that it will have key and values. That means directly it is going to return an object with ID as 1, name as what? TV. So that it is easy to access the query string related values and use them. Actually, if direct query string is returned by using search, what we have to do? We need to use string functions. By using string functions, we need to extract after question mark equal values and use them. You know, already you learned here to extract only this ID. What you have to do? You can use slice, substring, index of, like string functions, and we can do that. Instead of doing that, what is the best option? We can use query. It will return the query string as an object. You can access and use it, right? So URL provides all the details to access the virtual path and use the virtual path. So to work with virtual path, you need this URL module. So what are the details it is having? So here syntactically first, require URL. So URL module provides a parse method that can convert the client the server URL into readable format, into readable format, into readable format, so that you can access details like host name. Host name is server name or IP address. Protocol. So returns HTTP or protocol name. We have query, returns query string values as object. Search returns complete query string. Href returns the complete URL. Path name returns the file virtual location. This contains folder and file name. So these are important details. So syntactically URL dot parse virtual path and true. So here true, it is a boolean value that allows converting of encoded data, that allows converting of encoded data. So that is URL module. So that is URL module. So example is this one. Example, I will copy this. This is just to get all the details of URL. Okay. This is test.js, right? So two important modules are there. One is path, another one URL. Next, after understanding this, you have one more important concept, that is events. So node events, another important events. So already you detailedly learnt about events in general JavaScript, because when we learned JavaScript events, I given a detailed definition which software design it follows, what is event handler, what is event listener, what are event arguments. I explained very clearly about them. So you already know about the basic points about event. So in a HTML JavaScript combination, you used so many events like what? Mouse, keyboard, button events, element state events, and so many. Now, what is the point here is we can create our own events. We can design our own events like on click, like on change. We can create our own events. You may ask like why we need our own events. Button have a click event, button have a drop down have a change event. Then why you need our own events? Why we need our own events? Actually, in future, these days you will not work, because these days you people are learning Angular and React like technologies. Angular and React like technologies are component based. Component based means already components are present, or later you will learn. You learned bootstrap components now, like carousel, like navbars and all. Component based means you can build your own component, and you can use your own components. For example, you used a component called select. What select component will do? Select component will give a drop down. In the drop down you will have items. You select any item, that item will be chosen. So this is actually a component. For example, if you know, you have learnt input. Input is also a component. Actually, you are saying like element na. Technically, input is not a element. Input is a component. If you remembered in HTML, I told you input type. You said date. Date is not a element. Date is a component. Because if you say input type date, what will happen? A calendar will come. User can select the month, day, year, and automatically selected date will be stored in a text box. That is designed by using a complete hierarchy. So what we can do is in future, we can create our own components like this. Suppose you know button is a component. You can create your own like button. That means you can create your own component. You can give your name to that component. And when you use it, automatically it will render an output. That means you can design your own components. But these days people are not learning this with JavaScript, because creating components using JavaScript is a lengthy process. It's a very big concept. That is the reason people are migrating towards React, Angular, Vue like technologies, because they provide an easy technique of dealing with components. So when you create your own components, these components need events also. That means you are creating your own element. If you create your own element like a button or a text box, then you can have your own events also. Because that component should work with certain functionality, events also you can design. That means what event you want for this, you can give your own event, right? That means you can design your own events. You can create your own events. So what Node.js will do, it will provide a module called events. By using events module, you can create your own events. You can design your own events. Let's see how. So that means how we can create our own events and use our own events. But for this, in interviews, when they ask you about node events, obviously they will ask you all event basic points also, like what is event, what is event handler, what is event listener, what are event arguments. You learn default arguments, custom arguments, right? So some more technical things are there. We will see how to design these events. So just to refresh the concept, because many people attending from other batches also this backend, if anybody don't have the definition about event, they should have the definition. So I am giving the definitions. So first point, what is event? So this is the first option. What is event? Already you know, event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify change. Event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify the change. So here, what is event pattern? What is event pattern? Actually, event follows a software design pattern called, remember that? Which pattern? Event follows a software design pattern called observer. Remember, event follows a software design pattern called observer. Actually, it is a communication pattern. It is a communication pattern. So here one more here is event uses delegate mechanism. Delegate mechanism. Delegate mechanism means what? Function pointer. Delegate means function pointer. Event uses a delegate mechanism, which is a function pointer mechanism. Which is a function pointer mechanism. Now, what is event handler? Remembered? What is event handler? So event handler defines the action. Event handler defines the action to be performed. Event handler defines the action to be performed. defines the actions to be performed. It is a trigger for event. It is a trigger for event. It is a trigger for event. These all generally we discussed in HTML and JavaScript. We learned about this. Actually, what is it? On click. On click is what? Event. And on click, it will define certain function name. So that means this is called as what? Event handler. On click, what functionality it performs, that is configured as what? Event handler. So we have an event and we have an event handler. Actually, here, when you write your own events, let's see how we can design that. So event follows a software design pattern. And you remembered what is event listener? What is event listener? What is event listener? Event listener is used to configure event for any element dynamically. Dynamically, we can configure event for any element by using a listener. So listener is used for adding event for element. Events are added for element dynamically by using a listener. In JavaScript, you learned add event listener, right? So event listener, it configures event for component dynamically. So listener have a trigger. Listener have a trigger. Listener have a trigger and action to perform. Listener have a trigger and action to perform. You can add listener or remove listener dynamically. You can add the listeners or remove the listeners dynamically. Adding and removing listeners dynamically. So listener and how to use it. Actually, these are general JavaScript topics only you learned already. How the events and event listeners, how these are configured and how we use them. So in JavaScript events, all these concepts, I don't need to show example here, that you will learn in JavaScript only. Server side, how do we write? Configure the events. Let's see. Actually, we have an constant events module is present. We have to use require and events. We have events module. This events module have so many options. Events module provides so many options. For example, if anyone asks like on click, change, blur, focus, key up, key down, so many events are present, key down, so many are present. If anyone asks like from where these are all derived, that means all events have some functionality. That means all these events have a functionality. The question is from where that functionality is coming. So from where all these events are derived, actually all events are derived from a base class. We have a base class called event emitter. Event emitter is a base class. Every event that you are using in any application, all those events are derived from event emitter. Event emitter is the base class for event. That means all events are derived from one class. And what is that class? Event emitter. Already I showed you in Node when we learned OOP concept, I showed you inheritance. Actually, every event, for example, we have a click. Click extends event emitter. What does it means? That means click is a class and this class is inheriting event emitter. That means how it gets event behavior. Events get event behavior by deriving a base class called event emitter. Event emitter is the base class for creating events. All events are created from a base class event emitter. If you want to create your own events also, you need the same class. Which class you need? Event emitter. By using this class, we can create our own events. So, actually, another question is, what is event emitter? What is event emitter? What is the concept of event emitter? So, event emitter is the base class for all events. It is the base class for all events. Every event is derived from event emitter base. Every event is derived from event emitter base. Every event is derived from event emitter base. So, how you create the events? Let's see. Actually, to create the events, we have events dot. You can see event emitter is present. So, event emitter is the base for all events. Every event is derived from that event emitter. That means actually events dot, we have an event emitter. This event emitter is going to define the base for all the events. So suppose you want to create an event, you need to configure an event. Then through this event emitter, you can create. That means first you can see this is a class now. So this is the class. So this class will provide you all the events. We can access that class and you know how to create an object for the class. What we have to do? So let some event is equal to, we need to use events. So events dot what event emitter. That is the class. That means now what is the object for this class? Event. By using this class, we can by using this object we can access all the event related properties. You see now event is an object. Event object is having so many important properties. You see it is having listener, it is having emit, it is having so many are there. One is on. This is very important. That means actually if you clearly remembered when I told you about events in JavaScript, I told you a concept like, do you know the difference? Means I told you that on click is different, click is different. Remember that? Right? What is difference? Click is the listener name, on click is the handler name. Understood? That means actual event name is not on click. Actual event name is what? Click. So whenever you write event dynamically for element, you use click. Already in JavaScript, I explained you that situation concept also. So why every event have a on word? Because event emitter, actually what happens is, I told you event handler na. Event handler means suppose we have a button, on click is equal to, what is it? Some insert click. This is a function. What is this on is going to do is, this on is going to attach this function on this. Understood? That means what it means, when click is on, it will do this functionality. That means when anybody clicked, what functionality to perform? That is designed by using on click. On indicates what event to fire up, on that event what functionality to fire up. That means event name and the function name is defined by using on. On is a keyword actually. On is a keyword. That means by using this on keyword, you are telling that on click, use this insert click. Actually, it is not simply on click. What we are saying, on click, perform that particular functionality. That means when click is on, it will do that particular functionality. So, which function an event have to execute? The event name and function name is defined by using one method. What is that method? On. On is a method which is used to attach event name and function name. That means which event, what functionality to perform. That is defined by using which method? On. On is used for registering an event handler. On is used for registering event handler. Off is used for removing the event handler. We can remove the handler by using off, and we can add the handler by using what? On. By using on. So generally what happens here is, first you created a event object. After creating event object, which functionality it should perform, you write the functionality. For example, I am writing a functionality let where anything you can use. I will give one functionality like handle button click. That is the functionality. What is the function? Function, it should perform a functionality console.log. It should perform a functionality like button clicked. Button clicked. That is the message should come. Okay, that means this is the functionality should happen. That is the functionality should happen. So how do we write our own events? We have to write events by using event dot what? On. What is the event name? You have to define event name. Event name. What is the event name? Your own name. You can give any name, like click, like change, like blur. You can give any name. I will give the name, for example, send is the name. Send is the name. That means we have our own event called send. Set. Okay. On this, what functionality to perform? It is asking the functionality. That means send means, that means what it is saying? Adds a listener function to the end. Which function? Which function it should execute? Handle button click na? That means we have to use the function name handle button click. That means what event will do? That means that event is registered successfully. What is the event name? Event name is actually send. Send. And what is the on function? On send, what functionality to perform it is telling. That is what people usually call as event handler. We call it as event handler. Event handler means what event it will do. On that event, what functionality it will do. That is event handler. This is how events are designed. All the events in the background are designed like this. So now we are creating the events our own like this. Now that is the handler we are having. This is the handler. And see now how to execute the events. How to execute the events. Actually, to execute the events, we have an emit. Emit is to execute the event. Event is used for executing the event. That means what event emit will do? Emit is going to execute the event. That means what it is going to do here, you see, synchronously calls each listener registered to the event name. That means what is the function registered? Handle button click. That means it will call that and it will execute that. That means whenever send works, it is going to perform this functionality. It is going to perform the functionality. Actually, the send is the event name. Here, if I run that node test.js, it is not showing anything. Because actually what you done, you just registered. You just registered an event. You created one event, you registered an event. This event must be used na? That means what is your event name? Event name is what? Send. And it has to emit. And actually emit, so emit is expecting event name. Which event name to execute? Event name is what? String. Event name is what? Send. That means when you emit this send, then what will happen? It will perform the functionality. And what that functionality is going to do is it will display the message button click. That is how actually events are created. Events are created. That means, so first every event have a function to execute. You have to define the function. How to attach the function to any particular event. So you have to define that by using what? How to execute the event. Execute the event by using which method? Emit. Emit which method you have to define. Suppose you given a wrong name. You given a wrong name, it will not execute. Because you need to use the exact name. What is the name defined for the event? You have to use that name. That is the reason, if you remembered in JavaScript, you learned add event listener na? Listener. When you add event listener, you have a event name click and we have a function. Am I right? We have the function. That means usually the same thing you are defining by using this on actual. By using that on. So we have to configure the event and define the event. So I will explain one more time. Let's see. First, step by step, we will see the process, how we have to define. So here, what is event emitter? Emitter is nothing but It is the base class for creating all events, call events. So here we will write a syntax here. Configuring server side events. Configuring server side events. So how do we configure the server side events? First, import the events module. Require, constant events is equal to require events. Next, create an object, a new object. Create a new object for event emitter class. Create a new object for event emitter class. Event is equal to new event emitter. Event is equal to new event emitter. Right. So create a new object for event emitter. Next, here, configure a function. Configure a function that works as a subscriber. Configure a function that works as a subscriber. You already know a sender subscriber. Subscriber means configure a function that works as subscriber. Actually, it is a function that defines actions to perform. It is a function that defines actions to perform. That defines actions to perform. When event is triggered. So let some hand subscriber name. That means you can define some name. It is a function. Handle name. You have to define certain function. Right. Now we need to register. Register event. Register event by using on method. Register event by using on method. Register the event by using on method. So what we have to do, event dot on, event name, handle name. Event name and handle name. Actually what it does, it uses add event listener and registers a new event by specified name. every event requires a handler function. Every event requires a handler function. Requires a handler function. Every event requires a handler function. Can you turn on the light? Light. That's this one not required. This one off here. So it defines the handle name. After that, what we have to do, we have to execute the event. Who executes the event? Event is executed by using emit function. So we have event dot emit and the event name. It executes. And when it executes, it performs the functionality. Right. So how do we write various events? Means how do we define various events? So for example, we are writing, let's see one more time the complete scenario. First, we have to import events module, and we have to create an event object by using events dot what event emitter. By using that, we need to configure. Now, to the event, we need to, every event requires a functionality. We have to write the functionality. So we will define a functionality called, suppose we have a handle some event, that is handle event. Actually, we call this as what? Subscriber. Subscriber defines the actions to perform, right? So it is a function. In a shorthand way also we can write, and it will perform certain functionality. Console.log. So event executed successfully. This message will come. Okay. Now, what is this? Actually, this is handler name. Handler name. Reasonably, I will give. Okay. Now, how to configure event? Event dot what? On. Event name. You can give any name. Any name. Suppose I given the event name as some send is the event name. And what is the functionality it should handle? We have to define the handler name. That's it. That is the reason actually your JavaScript, what is this? Actually event name is send. Then your JavaScript uses on send. That means it uses on send. Am I right? On send, it uses the handler name. That means finally in the user interface that is accessed and used like this. That is the point. On is a function which executes an event called send, and that on that particular event it will perform the functionality. Actually, I given a definition, it is a function pointer. That means on send event trigger emit, what it is going to do, it is going to point towards a function and that function will perform the functionality. So now how do we send the event? How do we run the event? How do we run the event? Event dot what? Emit. We have to emit. What is the event name? We have to define the event name. Event name is what? Send. Send is the event name. That event will trigger. When the event triggers, that means it is going to perform the functionality. It is going to define the functionality. So you see, when I run this now, what is it? Node test dot what? JS. It is going to perform the functionality. Actually, our components, whatever components we design, our components will use these events. Our components will use these events. I just created one event and defined it. We actually put all this in a combination. Front end, back end, all the communication with the front end and back end. With that, we design like this. For example, if I ask you, like, when I execute this send, it should get data from MongoDB database. Of course, you can do. When I executed send, it should send a request, get the data from MongoDB database and return. Is it a difficult thing? It's not any difficult thing because it is same concept. Just this function should get the data now. This function should get the data. That means when I will give an example up to this here. Suppose when I execute the send, it should get the data from certain database. Then how do you write? You know all the techniques. What you have to do, constant, what is it? Mongo client is equal to what? Require MongoDB dot what? Mongo client. So then what we have to do? Actually, Mongo client will have a connection string. Here we have to execute the functionality. What is it? Mongo client dot what? Connect. Connect with MongoDB :/127001117. It is a then, so we need a client object, and what we have to do? Client object DB method, we need a database as what? Shopping. So where database is equal to that database dot what? Collection. What is the collection name? The collection name is what? So the collection name is we have products categories, categories dot find. It should get them to array dot, then you will get the documents, and we need to log the documents, console.log. What is it? All the documents. That means on send, this is going to execute and get the data. We just write all the combination of functionality. On send, it should get the data and display the data. It is showing some empty array, it is showing. Why? Categories is not there. Shopping DB and database name. Sample DB. I think our database name is sample DB. It will get that and show. Our database name is sample DB. That means we return a simple custom event. On that event, it will perform that particular functionality. You can do anything. We can create client-side request. From that request, we can execute that event and define the functionality. So usually, configuring the events is done by using this. This is just one example for that. So this is an example for events. How do you define the events and configure the events? So this is test dot what? test.js, test.js. So we have to know about some important interview related terms here. What is event and which design pattern event follows? What is the mechanism event uses? That is function delegate mechanism means function pointer. And what is event handler and what is event listener? Actually, you see this event. So this event is having an add listener. This event is having an add listener. And what is that add listener? It is expecting the event name and it is expecting the function. You see, it is an alias for event emitter on. Alias means what? Instead of using on, you can also use event emitter, add event listener. I given in the definition also. In the definition I given here, actually event.on, it uses an add event listener. That means it is an alias name of that functionality. That means instead of writing on, you can use a add event listener. For example, you see here, I am not using on, I am using here, what is it? Event dot add event listener, event name. Event name is what? Send is the event name, and the listener function name. Function name is what? Handle name. And you see emit. I'm using the emit function for that. Add, and remember, this event emit is not enough actually, because usually what it is going to do, it is going to get the data and display. And what is the event name? It should emit event. What is that event name? Send. But generally, this entire functionality, it is going to do the same. But generally, technically, we learned the actual method. What is the actual method? On. But remember, Angular, React like technologies, they don't use the handlers directly. They use listener mechanism. So in the listener, in the background, there is an handler. So add listener is an alias. So if anyone asks, another question is there. What is difference between add event listener and on? Actually, add event listener is just an alias of on. Is an alias of on. Is an alias of on. Syntactically, event dot add event listener, event name and the handle name, emit and the event name. In a shorthand technique, you can write everything. Right. So this example also I will give here. Means how to create our own events. How do we configure our own events? This is important. Actually, in modern JavaScript based technologies, very popularly they ask this question. For Angular React like interviews, you will see this question very common, like how to create our own events, because there we design our own components. When we create our own components, our own events also important. This is one basic option for configuring events, right? Next, once you know about this, now we need to understand how do we use the two frameworks we will see. One is Mongoose, another one is MySQL. How to communicate using Mongoose and MySQL. Then we will go into the concept of Express.js. That means Node with Express.js, how to create APIs and work with the APIs. So once we finish Express.js, then we will start a project. That means we are going to start building a project. In that project, we will learn jQuery, Sass concepts also. Means how to use jQuery and Sass in the front end. By using them, we will implement one complete end-to-end application. That means a complete end-to-end project we will design using these technologies, right? So once we finish the project, then we can complete the backend part, all the backend part. For that, you have to learn Express.js and you have to learn front-end jQuery and Sass. Sass is just alternative for CSS language you need to know. And with not JavaScript, with jQuery, we will build a front-end application. Later, you can replace jQuery with Angular or React like technologies that you learn in future. Okay. Then tomorrow we will continue, and in tomorrow's session we will learn Mongoose and MySQL connections, how to communicate with those databases. Okay, tomorrow we'll see.